why people don't take me anywhere.
Except on Facebook Live videos.
Exactly, you ain't say nothing.
This is beautiful.
But baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet. I've got a song for everything.
Yeah, that's good. Are you excited?
I am excited. It's a little bit like later than I like normally do outreachy stuff, but I'm ready. I'm excited.
You're ready? You're gonna charge us extra for working after 5
Oh god, no. No, I just had my cup of coffee a little later than I would normally have it on a Thursday? What day is it? Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah.
God,
almost
where time goes.
Friday, almost the weekend.
Cheers.
That's awesome. So for everyone who's joining us live, this is Queer and A. Reminder that you can submit questions through this whole video by either going to the Yakwa Facebook page, the Yep Facebook page, the YPN Facebook page, or the Google form. Basically, any way that we might get in touch with you, please send us your questions as we go on with the Q&A. I'm so excited. We've had some amazing questions.
Yeah, I'm super excited to answer some of these.
Some of these, most of them, I just want to know the answer to be honest. Like, a lot of them, I'm genuinely excited to find out.
Yeah, honestly, I just keep having these moments where I'm like, I wish I had access to this when I was in high school. Because, God, year 10 Matt would have been asking some seriously, I'm going to say juicy questions. Juicy. Okay, maybe wrong term of phrase. Oh, you win some, you lose some. If the word juicy offends people, maybe switch off.
If you don't like that, you're not going to like the rest of the video. Yeah, I think we're having some technical difficulties, so
yes,
that's alright. That comes with the territory.
This is the issue of doing things for the first time. Sometimes you just have to fumble your way through and enjoy the roller coaster.
I hope there's someone watching.
That analogy will come up again. Just wait for it, friends.
Just fumbling through the roller coaster. So how long have you actually been studying sexology for?
So I did my first unit in sexology 2012, but it was only like one unit a semester for the first like 2 years. And then had started doing my master's in sexology in 2016.
Cute.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Has it impacted your sex life, do you think?
It's an interesting question. I think so, and definitely like in a better way, because I think as soon as you normalize something, it enables you to be a little more confident. So I was a lot more confident, I guess, like discussing things and talking about things, which is why I'm being asked to answer a bunch of questions on queer issues. Queer issues today.
Okay, I think we're going to get started. So for everyone who's watching at home, my name's Charlotte. I am from the Youth Pride Network. I'm one of the co-founders. And with me, I am really excited to introduce our first guest on Queer and A, who is Matt Bacon, who is the Health Promotions Officer for Gay and Bisexual Men's Projects at the WA AIDS Council. So thank you so much for coming in. We're super excited.
No, I assure you I am probably more excited, which is why if I'm like shaking, it's not me being weird, it's just genuine excitement to get into these questions.
Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I'd also like to remind everyone that some things we talked about today might be a little bit sensitive, might be a little bit triggering for some people, so please look after yourself and remember there's lines out there like Lifeline, which is 13 11 14, 1-800 RESPECT, or the Sexual Assault Resource Centre, which is 6458 1828. And I think without further ado, let's get started. Reminder to everyone at home that you can actually keep submitting questions wherever you get your questions. Okay, so the first question is from one of the people at home was, how do you know what to do during sex without watching porn? I should probably, before you jump into that, clarify this video is about men who have sex with men. Yeah. So maybe let's quickly clarify, what do we mean by men who have sex with men?
Cool. So my job is all around a population group called Men That Have Sex with Men. essentially the purpose of that is trying to define a behavior rather than trying to define a sexuality. So very much where my work, a lot of my work revolves around is around sort of STIs, HIV. So it's being gay or bisexual does not put you at more risk of contracting HIV. It's having sex with other men because, as I'm sure we will get into later, it has far more to do with the behaviour and sort of the exposure to certain substances and just the population group and the epidemic that is, sort of the epidata that are present in men that have sex with men. So yeah, that's where it comes from. So when we say men that have sex with men, we're talking about anyone that is gay, anyone that falls under a bi umbrella, and anyone that identifies as straight that might still want to have a bit of a bromance sometimes. And then when it comes to men, I usually just like to classify it as anyone that identifies on the transmasculine scale. So yeah, that's usually where I come from.
Yeah. So we're not just talking about cis dudes when we do
No,
this.
not at all. And I think that it's it's funny to talk to some people and they're like, wait, what? Like trans men also have sex with men? I'm like, yes. That is a thing that people do. So yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with probably my favorite question that we received. How do I know what to do during sex without watching porn?
I'm so glad that this is where we're starting because it's just like rip the band-aid off. Like let's just get right to this. Listen, I like to think that like there's a certain amount of instinct when it comes to these sorts of things. Like at the end of the day, we are quite evolutionary beings. I think that even if you're not watching porn, there's a certain level of fantasy involved in experimenting with sex. So I think that if you've got different fantasies or if you've got different desires, don't shy away from those. If anything, I would say, find a partner that you can trust, that you can explore some of those with. Talk your way through. And then I'm one of those people that like practice makes perfect. So at some point you are going to have a little play around with it. And some people might want to explore their desires through pornography consumption first. And if they do, that's totally fine, each to their own. And some people might decide that they would rather explore that with another partner first. I do think that masturbation with or without porn is super important as well because you're getting to know your body. You're very much normalizing your body as well. And I think there's a certain level of confidence that you can build from doing that. And not just that, it's also one of those things that it's like, if I know how to please me, I'm able to communicate that with my partner. So I think that with or without porn, masturbation can be a really useful key as well. To start touching on what you're like as a sexual being, I guess.
So masturbate a lot. I love that.
Listen, not a lot. Like at some point you've got to draw the limit, but if you don't think it's problematic, I don't think it's problematic, you go for it.
Do you think there's that question comes from this anxiety around like doing sex right? Because like another question we got was around, what is bottoming? What is topping? What does verse mean? Why is it such a big deal? Like,
I think that you are an absolute superhuman if you're not concerned that you might be doing sex wrong. Like, I just think that is human instinct just to be doubtful and to be anxious, particularly when you're just starting out because, I think everyone wants to be good at sex. Like, no one wants to think that they're bad at it. So yeah, I think that, and not just that, I think that humans are supposed to be quite social beings. There is a certain element of wanting to interact, and whether or not that's in a romantic sense or whether or not that's in a sexual sense, people want to be able to please their partners and satisfy their partners in the same way that you want to make your friends happy and you want to make your parents happy and your siblings happy and all those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it does come from that space. In terms of like the tops, bottoms, and verses thing, oh my. I don't know, it's hard because for some people it is going to be a bit of a deal breaker. Some people might be more innately sexual than others, and in that case then I think that you should be able to seek a partner that is going to fulfill your wants and needs in a relationship to an extent. Like if you've got super ridiculous expectations that there's never going to be any form of give and take, if you're not willing to negotiate certain things, and I think that there's a few issues around that. But no, essentially there's the issues that arise about the tops, bottoms, and verse thing in gay world is just very much, we like to box people.
Can I jump in though?
Yeah, sure.
What is a bottom? What is a top? What is a verse?
See, this is just how innately homosexual that I am, that I just assume that everyone knows this. So tops, when we're talking tops, we're talking the penetrative partner, so the person that is inserting into the bottom. The bottom is then the receptive partner. Versatile is anyone that does either, so they'll both top and they'll both bottom, sometimes in separate sittings, sometimes at the same time, sometimes, yeah, however they decide to do that. So that's a versatile. And then there is also sides. So sides are people that don't want to have anal sex at all, and it's something that's not as discussed in queer community or gay and bisexual men, but it is completely valid choice, to the point that it's actually shown through most surveys that heterosexual people have more regular anal sex than gay men do. In saying that, though, I think an element is like, oh, every birthday we have anal, so it's regular. Whereas other people's perceptions might be like, oh, we only do it like once every 3 weeks, so like it's not that regular. So yeah, there is a little bit of, you know, research bias in that setting. But yeah, so it's, if you're a side and if anal is not your thing, that's also completely valid. But people do talk a lot more about tops, bottoms, and verses.
Okay, and that's specifically relating to anal.
And that's specifically relating to, listen, I would say that it could relate to like front hole penetration as well if you're having sex with trans men. But it sort of depends. That's a conversation that you'd have to have with the individual, because I think it can vary. So yeah.
Cool.
And I guess it's brought up a lot more pure because on like Grindr and apps and things, people like to categorize. So yeah, it makes things a little bit easier to negotiate. Yeah.
So our next question. So just a quick reminder, you're watching Queer and A with Matt Bacon from the WA AIDS Council. You can submit questions live on any of our Facebook page or on our Google form. So the next question we received was, I want to learn more about providing pleasure to all genders. So we'll cover this on a bunch of different, maybe a few different videos, but what are your tips for making sex pleasurable?
Oh, this is just like so sweet. I just love anyone that's like all about partner pleasure. Cool. Okay, so I would say the most important thing is being able to communicate what you want. I think that there's an element of like trust that you can build through being able to be completely open and honest about what you want sexually. So I think that's probably the first step. 2, never make assumptions on what people want. Is that if you, and boy, have I met a few people that I would just innately be like, oh, this person's probably going to be a top, or this person's going to be a bottom, or this person's going to be verse, or this person is going to like, you know, quite strong friction, or this person's going to like it quite slow and rhythmic. And then you're just like, you're going to be wrong 95% of the time, because people are just so different in terms of what their needs are sexually. I also don't think that, you know, there's any one way to perform a sexual act. So yeah, my biggest tip would be communication and negotiation, understanding that like knowing where your limits are, but knowing what are the things that you're like, you know what, I would give that a go, and being able to negotiate that with your partner, being like, okay, well, if this is something that's really good for you, then like that's something that I feel comfortable doing in, and maybe in return there's something that you don't normally want that you would be willing to do as well. And then it's that getting to know and exploring, and really that's a big fun part of all forms of sex, is that initial like learning your way around.
So just for the people at home, maybe they're going to have sex for the first time, maybe they're going to try anal for the first time or oral. Can you give me like really quick, what are your quick tips?
Okay, quick tips would be 1, condoms, lubricant. Look at yourself in the mirror, whatever you need to do to like increase your confidence. I think that's a huge part, because if you're going in anxious, I think that you can be your own worst nightmare sometimes. When I first was becoming sexual and experimenting and exploring, I got so caught up in my own head that I forgot to actually enjoy the whole situation. So yeah, I think 1, have a little bit of you time. If it means like cutting your nails, if it means trimming, or if it means shaving your face, or doing your hair, or getting a haircut, whatever you need to do to make yourself feel like, I'm a little bit sexy, hell yeah, then do that. Take away some of the other things that might cause you to get a little anxious. Make sure you've got lube on hand. Make sure that you've got condoms. It doesn't mean that you necessarily are going to use them that night, but at least if you've got them, then you know that if things go the way that is leading towards sex, that you're prepared in that way. And then I would say, yeah, communication and trust. And I think that trust can be built very, very quickly when you're an open communicator. So don't think that I'm saying like, you know, you need to know them for an X amount of time. I'm a huge fan of a short-term engagement. And I think that that is a completely valid way to have sex as well. But yeah, communicate what you want. One of the reasons why I think the apps can be actually really useful, because you're not face-to-face with someone. It's not necessarily like, oh, what if they think that I'm weird, or what about this? You can actually negotiate that from a space and a distance.
Yeah.
So there's not that like pressure that's innately put on you. So sometimes communicating through that way as well can be really useful.
Awesome. So that kind of leads into the next question we got, which was, I've heard that the walls of the rectum are tissue paper thin. If this is true, then can you tear it during anal sex?
Listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, yes. I don't know if it's tissue paper thin, but yeah, they're thinner, and it's definitely not as durable as other body parts. But the biggest reason that it's prone to tearing isn't because of how fragile it is. It has more to do with the fact that the anus doesn't lubricate. So whereas, you know, the majority of vaginas will self-clean and self-lubricate, the rectum does not do that. Yeah, you do need to apply lubricant. I've had, so many times have I heard people that are like, I just didn't realize, I thought it was going to be like vaginal. And I'm like, no, it's just not. So yeah, it's important to use lubricant. And even when you're using lubricant, it is possible to get micro tears still in that situation as well. So relaxation can be really important. So it goes back to the thing that, like, whatever you need to do to feel a little sexy, to help you relax in that moment so you're not feeling anxious, is going to make anal far more pleasurable. Other things that I would say is maybe using a silicone-based lubricant can be really useful as well, because it doesn't dry up as fast. Whereas water naturally absorbs into skin and linings, silicone does not. So it stays wetter longer. So as soon as someone's in, they can sort of stay there longer, and you don't need to worry about pulling out and then reapplying and then going back in and all that sort of stuff as well.
So a reminder, you are watching Queer & A with Matt Bacon, and you can submit your questions on our Facebook page or via our Google form anonymously, and we will ask the questions live on air. So that was awesome.
Can I just add to that as well?
Yes.
That whereas we were talking before as well around defining the sexual behaviour, that's a lot of the stuff that you hear when it comes to HIV, is that because that then leads into an entry into the bloodstream, that's where HIV risk can occur. So the act of having sex with a man doesn't necessarily have to be risky, but as soon as you start getting micro tears and things like that, then that's where there can be higher risk involved. So it's important to be mindful of bloodborne viruses in those settings when you might have micro tears. And micro tears heal by themselves most of the time. If you've ever had one for longer than a week, go see your doctor. I would recommend trying to see some gay-friendly doctors. On M-Clinic's website, there's a list of GPs. Just because I did have a very, very awkward run-in with my GP. When I was like, hey, by the way, like, had this and it doesn't seem quite right for my body. It doesn't normally feel like this. And they were like, so yeah, gay-friendly GPs can be really important to have as well.
How would you know if you've got a micro tear?
You can tell.
Okay.
Like,
I will.
I've had at the incident, I didn't realize because I was in a space where I was like, woo, I'm having a great time. But the next day I was like, yep, that is definitely present. And if you don't realize straight away, next time you go to have sex and like lubricant hits it, it stings just like any other cut on the body. So yes, sorry about how graphic that is, but yeah, you'll know.
That's awesome. So our next question is kind of two questions have been combined into one. The first one is, do people who've been assigned female at birth have a G-spot in their ass like cis men do? And that kind of follows into the next question is, can trans guys enjoy bottoming?
Okie dokie. Such a great question. Okay, so there's the G spot in men is usually perceived to be the prostate. So when you look at where the prostate is, it's sort of like, let's imagine that if someone was laying on their back, you'd look at it being in and up, so about a finger's depth in first knuckle. So in a female body person or someone that was assigned female at birth, it's not the prostate. But the clitoris itself isn't just like the button on the front. It actually has legs that extend back into the body too. So yeah, it's a common myth that it's just the front part. It's actually more of like a wishbone shape is the way that I would define it. And so the legs of the clitoris wrap around the rectum as well. So for a lot of people, the stimulation, sensation and enjoyment that comes from anal is through the stimulation of that part internally. So yeah, I would say that there is to an extent a more sensitive spot. I think one of the things though that particularly when it comes to anal is that there's sort of two different sensations that you experience. So one is like the nerve endings of like the entrance, so to speak. So like having those stretch receptors triggered, pleasured, aroused, whatever you plan on doing. A lot of people get enjoyment from that sensation, and other people have more of like an internal pleasure. So I define it as like the feeling of being full, which sounds really gross for anyone that probably hasn't done anal before, but it's you learn to differentiate the feeling of like being full in the like I need to poop, and the full in like this is really really nice. But the first time that I had sex, I was like, oh my god, this is going to end so badly. This does not feel right. This does not feel comfortable. And it's just because my body had only ever experienced that feeling at another time. So yeah, it depends on where your enjoyment is from. Like I know people that, can think of nothing worse than having people that are thick because the stretch receptor just isn't what they enjoy. They would prefer something that's more targeted towards those internal spots. And to be honest, I learned how to have anal from one of my female family members because they love it. They love it. And that's as a heterosexual woman, like they can orgasm through anal, but they can't orgasm through vaginal. So bodies are different. Nerve endings are nerve endings. And I don't think it matters what sex, gender, like body that you have, nerve endings are nerve endings. So try stimulate them. And if it's something that you like, then do it more. And if it's something that you don't like, then that's also okay. There's probably other nerve endings that are going to be more sensitive on you. So yes, trans men can enjoy bottoming, but they also might not. And both are completely valid and both are cool. Explore, yeah.
Awesome. The next question is really cool. Is there anything wrong with wanting a threesome? I've never told this to anyone.
Oh. Can I just like precurse this with like as queer people, it's so like amazing some of the shame and embarrassment that we have talking about what we want sexually. Like somehow we're like, oh no, I shouldn't want this or I shouldn't want that. So the fact that this person has gone out on a limb and told someone that that's what they want, first step done. If you don't ever communicate what you want, then you're never going to get it. So power to you. Get rid of that shame and stigma. We should all be talking about sex because everyone on this earth will engage with their sexuality somehow. So whether you're gay, bi, asexual, trans, everyone engages with their sexuality on either a romantic or physical or sexual. Like, just the act of puberty is the thing. So yeah, considering everyone experiences it, there should not be this much stigma attached to talking about it. Leading on from that, no, there is nothing wrong with wanting a threesome at all. Have a foursome, have a fivesome, as many people as you want to engage, as long as everyone that's there consents to it, then hell yeah. Like, granted, if you're having a large group of people, I would recommend using condoms just because it prevents the likelihood of spreading different like STIs, prevents the likelihood of contracting HIV and a few other things like that. But get regular testing as well and just live life. So yeah, there is nothing wrong with wanting a threesome. If there was, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Okay, next question. Can I wear my binder during sex?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, as I said, anything that makes you feel more comfortable, do it and do it to the best of your ability. Yeah, I would say communicate. that's what you're doing. So that if your partner was to notice that you seem somewhat like anxious, or if you were pulling at anything, that it's just going to take away from your anxiety of worrying that they're noticing it. But yeah, if you're being like open and upfront, just being like, hey, this is what I'm wearing, then yeah, anything that makes you feel more comfortable is literally such an important part of sex. Like, it's just, I literally cannot stress enough the ability to negotiate, the ability to feel comfortable, and the ability to communicate what you want is just so key. So yeah, wear your binder if that's gonna be better for you.
So just a reminder, you're watching Queer and A with Matt Bacon from the WA AIDS Council, and you can submit questions live and we will answer them during the video. Which leads us to our next question. What is douching? Is it important? How and why would I do it?
Okay, this is just one of my favourite questions, because no one in, like, even as gay and bisexual men, we understand that a lot of us have done this before, but it's like, this is the least sexy part of talking about sex. So let's just jump straight into it. There's a great video as well by Davey Wavy that if anyone needs a more visual representation of what I'm about to explain, go check that out. So douching is essentially the act of cleaning your rectum so that you can have anxious-free, guilt-free anal pleasures without worrying that you're going to poop on someone, for a lack of a better way to put it. As I said, whereas vaginas self-clean, the rectum doesn't. So it's just one of the things that you have to work around. Listen, as I said, if it's going to help you relax by feeling like if it's going to help you feel more comfortable, then yes, douching is important. There isn't a lot of research that shows douching to be harmful, as long as it's not being done super, super, super frequently, and as long as it's not being done with like burning, scalding water. So there are a lot of safe ways to do it. There's lots of people that do it for medical reasons as well. So again, don't be afraid or ashamed of douching. Do I think that it's important or necessary? I also think no. In saying that, though, a big part of where it comes from for me is I'm like, it's sort of an health and safety thing. Like, if you want the pleasure, you sort of got to gamble it sometimes. And I quite like spontaneous sex, and that can be really hard to have as gay and bisexual men and men that have sex with men, because if you're like, oh, okay, like I need to go douche and then I've got to wait an hour, it takes a little bit of the romance out. So yes, it's not important, it's not necessary, but if it's going to help you relax, yes, do it. There's I would recommend going to like your local adult shop and getting like a proper bulb enema is usually the easiest. Essentially it's just like a bulb that you fill with water, and then it's like a little nozzle, and then you insert and just empty the bulb into the rectum, shake around a little bit, and then you'll know what to do next. Again, yeah, watch the Davey Wavy clip. It honestly is like, it's so, so, so good. And he's got a very good way of normalizing it. If I had more props, I would gladly show you how to do this. But I really feel like me doing this probably doesn't make much sense to people. So yeah,
we'll link to the video in the comments.
Yes. I'll leave it there for now.
Great. Next question was submitted to us. Conversation starters on talking about what each other likes and how to make it more enjoyable. So I guess we've talked about why that's important, but like, how do you bring it up?
Well, listen, for me, it's a little different because I talk sex all day, every day. So I'm very overt in my approach. I'm just like, hey, by the way, I've got a really sensitive neck. I have like the back of my neck being kissed. So I'm very comfortable just to like lay it out there, sort of thing, which has scared people off in the past. So I can't say that it's got 100% success rate. But yeah, so I think there's an element of trying to make it your own. It depends on what the nature of the relationship as well. If it is going to be a short-term engagement, you sort of got nothing to lose, because you don't have time to go out for dinner first. Not that you don't have time, but you may not want to, or it's just not the purpose of the relationship. So in those situations, I would say laying it out there, I'm like, well, if you're both there for an orgasm, then ensure that you get your orgasm. Communicate about what you're going to like and what you're not going to like, and what are the things that turn you on, what are the things that turn you off. And you can start with some of the more like vanilla topics if you're anxious, and it could just say like, listen, I've got a really sensitive neck. I like having my neck kissed. If you start with saying like, oh, by the way, I love having my cock deep-throated. Like, maybe that might be a little bit too harsh. But, like, kissing the neck, the back of the neck, oh, and by the way, like, when you suck me, this feels really good, like that. And I'm a huge fan of, like, complimenting during the act as well. So if someone's doing a good job, don't be afraid to vocalize that that's a really good spot that they're touching, or that's doing the trick, or that feels really good. A lot of that sort of feedback is very, very, very appreciated. And if you're afraid to do this face-to-face, honestly, I'm a huge advocate for apps. It's like, there's a lot of bad things about Grindr and Scruff and Hornet and all those other things. But there are some really, really good parts. And I think being able to talk to someone that's not right in front of you takes away a lot of that, like, peer pressure. So yes, if you are uncomfortable saying this to someone in person, do it over app first. And if it's a partner, then I think that you do have a little more time to take it slowly. Maybe it could be a matter of sending some photos first and then leading it from there. But I think after you do it a few times, you sort of learn to make it your own.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. So our next question is, I want more information about consent between partners. How do you establish consent when you're having sex with someone?
Cool. Okay, so just a precursor, the way that I like to talk about consent is that it's informed, it's enthusiastic. So consent is all about permission giving, essentially. So when seeking consent, I try to make it as verbal as possible so there aren't any misconceptions. If someone was just to sort of like slowly nod their head, there's an element of, oh, am I sure that this person wants to do this? Are they saying this just because they want me to be happy? Or it could be every likelihood that they're just anxious and that they cannot wait to have sex. So those are the times that I try and check in. Whereas if you make things nice and enthusiastic, so yes, I would love to... I was going to say something I'm not supposed to say. Yes, I would love to have sex. Then it takes away some of the questions. And again, there's other ways around it. Enthusiastic head nods are enthusiastic head nods. If you're sexting with someone, lots of smiley faces, like all those sorts of things. It doesn't always have to be verbal, but I think that takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And yeah, for me, I don't know. I just think that it really should be as simple as like, are you happy for me to do this? Would it be hot if I did this to you? Is this something that turns you on? Because if you're sitting there like, can I kiss your neck? Is it okay if I suck your penis? I am quite aroused now. Is it okay if I reach for a condom and put the lubricant on and then insert it in you? That's not quite as hot. Yeah. Unless you've got a clinical fetish. In that case, then like power to you. And by all means, get out some gloves. Do what makes you happy. But yeah, so... phrasing it more in like oh, this feels really good for me, how does that feel for you, can make it a little sexier. And keep checking in. Consent needs to be given before you start something. It needs to be given during something. It needs to be I like to check in after, because consent, it just makes everyone feel so much more comfortable. So yeah, they're sort of my ways that I would go about seeking consent.
What about when alcohol and drugs are involved?
This is always a grey area. Technically speaking, the laws around consent are that to give consent you need to be 16 and you need to be sober. So technically you cannot give consent under the influence of alcohol or any other drugs. In saying that, all you need to do is go to the court on a Saturday night and you will find two people that are very intoxicated that are super consenting to the things that they're about to do. So I think there has to be an element of checking in with your partner throughout. I think that there also has to be some level of discern where you're like, okay, yes, this person seems keen, but they're on a new level of intoxicated, that if they're possibly blacking out or something like that, then it might be easier just to postpone, wait for the morning after. And at the end of the day, if the police aren't notified of something, then it's not. And in the times where both people are drunk, is if they both consent, then the police won't find out. So it's not. I'm trying to find a way to word this. Trust your partner. If it's someone that you've been with for quite a long time, if you're both on a level where you're sober enough that you can negotiate it, then I think that's a good sign. But if you're ever uncertain, save yourself the heartache. Wait for the morning after. And if you're someone that has a habit of blacking out, I just try not to go back to people's houses, because I know that was very much like my narrative, that I would wake up the next day and be like, oh, I'm not entirely sure what happened for like an hour at this point. So I just was like, hey, I'm just going to go home. And if you're someone that's really keen on exploring this, then you'll wait. And if you're not, then to be honest, the sex was probably going to be quite bad anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of the way that I would broach it.
Yeah, and I guess it's important to keep in mind that anything that's not an enthusiastic yes is a no. So
yeah,
keeping in mind that consent is always,
and consent is literally one of the most important things. Like it's crazy to look at some of the statistics around consent. And in saying that, if you ever are in an experience where that happens, there is help. There are people that you can talk to. Don't be ashamed. Don't think that it was your fault. Don't think that because you had a drink that somehow you may have led them on. Like, that is all just bullshit that like cis white guys perpetuate in their privilege. So no, if you there are services. We talked about SARC at the start. Start there. They're a great resource to use if this is something that you want to talk about.
So just a reminder to everyone, those numbers we had at the start was 1-800-RESPECT and the Sexual Assault Resource Centre, which we will link in the comments. Okay, so reminder that you guys are watching Queer and A with Matt Bacon. If you have questions, you can submit them, and we have 10 minutes left, so we're going to try and smash through these.
Sorry, everyone, I talk.
Okay, next question. Which STIs can you catch by having oral sex with people?
Good one. Okay, so the way, the ones that you're most at risk of are all bacterial infections. So chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. Chlamydia and gonorrhea are localized. A lot of people don't realize that the bacteria lives in specific areas. So whereas if you get a blood test, that will tell you if you have HIV. You can't just do a urine sample and expect to find out if you've got oral chlamydia or oral gonorrhea. So making sure that throat swabs are part of your regular STI screening is super important. There are other STIs that you can get. Herpes, I don't worry too much around herpes because like 78% of the population has herpes already. So a lot of people are exposed and never get any outbreaks of cold sores. They never get sores. So if you do get diagnosed with herpes, don't think that you need to tell every partner or anything like that, because it's possible that it's just going to be in your bloodstream and you'll never have an outbreak. You'll never have any symptoms. So yeah, that's another one. You can get HIV from oral sex. You would have to be very, very unlucky. Purely because, again, you need to have an entry into your bloodstream for HIV to occur. So as long as you don't have any cuts or sores or ulcers or anything like that, there is no risk. Even if you do get cum in your mouth, and if there's no cum in your mouth, then there's no risk of HIV. So gonorrhea, chlamydia are the main ones.
Cool. Can you get STIs using condoms?
There are a few skin-on-skin ones. So herpes, if the condom doesn't cover the sore, can be one of them. Also some of the parasites. So crabs lives in pubic hair. Even though you're wearing a condom, pubic hair still touch, so you can get crabs. And if you're not wearing condoms for oral sex, then you can get chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. But that's particularly for oral sex.
Cool. Not cool, but...
Not cool, but all the bacterial ones are curable as well. So don't be afraid to, like, get an oral swab, because that just means that, like, a week later you get given a tablet and then it's gone. So yeah, unless it's gonorrhea, then they might have to jab you with... It's a tiny needle. Not that I've had it, necessarily.
So the next question, someone wanted to know about the proper use and care of toys in sex.
Cool. I used to work in an adult shop, so I just love talking about this sort of stuff. My number one tip for buying sex toys would be to get anything that's non-porous. So glass, silicone, stainless steel are all really good options, because it means that they're a lot easier to take care of. I'm a huge fan of the dishwasher, but not everyone has the opportunity or the potential to put their sex toys in their dishwasher. So in those cases, warm soapy water. To be honest, I've heard of like antibacterial wipes being used, as long as there's no alcohol in them, is super, super important. So don't wash them with anything that has any alcohol in it. You can buy specific cleaner, which works a treat, particularly the wipes, because it's super, super, super convenient. You don't need to carry them to the bathroom or anything. So yeah, that would sort of be my main tips. But if it's non-porous materials, honestly, warm water will get rid of most things. It's only once they start getting a bit older that I would start, upping the ante in terms of antibacterial care.
Cool. Where can I get an affordable pack and play strap-on? How do I care for it? And are there packers that work for everyday packing as well as sex? Can we start by explaining what a packer is?
Certainly. So a packer is something that trans men use to create the aesthetic of a penis, for a lack of better terms. So this is actually, when I saw this question, I was like, oh, I bought my little brother his first packer. And it's always something that I'm like super proud of, that I'm like, I bought my brother his first penis. And it's really, really nice for us. It's something that bonds us. And it was a really funny conversation because when he went to buy the first one, he was like, I want it to be 8 inches. And he wanted it to be 8 inches for everyday use. And because he was like, oh, if it's 8 inches for sex, that sounds about right. Massive porn myth, by the way. The average is not 8 inches. But yeah, so he was like, oh, if it's going to be used for sex, then it needs to be 8 inches. And I was like, you do not want to be walking around with an 8-inch flaccid penis in your pants. But that is not something that you want. Like, trust me on this. And he was like, fine, we'll do 6. And I was like, it's your birthday. Like, sure, let's do this. But you're going to regret this. So yes, you can get them. They're called like triple Ps. So they're piss, play, and pack. Thank you. I was like, there's another P. So yeah, they can be really useful if you do want to use like urinals and things like that, because they essentially are like a funnel that then have like an inbuilt urethra to make them hard for sex. Most of them come with a rod, so you would just like shove the rod into the urethra, which makes it stiff enough that it can be used for penetration. So there are those ones. They are fairly expensive if you want them to be multi-purpose. So I got the one for Dan, I got from freetom.com. Delivery took a little while, but other than that, it looks really real. It was slightly alarming how real it looked. And when I saw it in the box, just to like precurse that, I just realized how weird that sounded for a second. And if you're looking for something just for packing purposes, there is another product called Mr. Limpy that you can get from most sex shops. And they're just like silicone flaccid penises that are completely like reasonable sized. I've heard of people like unstitching the top of underwear and sliding it into that like little pouch that a lot of men's underwear has. So then that way it doesn't come into as much skin contact, so care is a little easier because you don't need to like wash it on the reg, and you don't have to have like silicone rubbing up against you all day. So yeah, they're the ones that I would recommend if you are using them for like sex and peeing and for packing. Just like anything, just like skin, it needs to be washed, but nothing that you couldn't just do in the shower. So yeah, that's sort of my tips to it.
Cool, awesome. So we've only got 5 minutes left, but we got a lot of questions about relationships. So I guess maybe to summarize, how do you know if you're in a healthy relationship, and where can LGBTI people go if things start to go wrong? Because I think sometimes we're scared to talk to the normal services because of stigma. So how do you know what you're doing is healthy, and where do you go when things go wrong?
See, this can be, particularly when you're just starting out, this can be something that's really tricky to navigate, because I know I have sort of been victim of it when you're, you sort of start falling for someone, and then you have this like innate feeling that, oh, we're a minority, so like there might not be a lot of other people. So I need to be more forgiving of the things that I deep down know aren't right for me, and I know aren't what I'm looking for in a partnership. So yeah, it can be very easy to end up in a relationship that you know is not right for you. In saying that though, I think that most people have a pretty good understanding of when something's not healthy. The way that I've sort of kept myself grounded is I consider anyone that doesn't motivate me or inspire me to be a better person is probably someone that I can live without. which again, I have gotten to a point that I know because I've got friends that are amazing. I've got friends that inspire me. So I don't feel like I need to have a romantic connection with someone because I've already got the support networks that I need. In terms of where to go, peer education is so important for queer people, which is why I think this program is so good. In saying that though, when you're young, I didn't have gay friends for bloody ever. I think going to services like getting in contact with YPN and trying to find peers through those avenues. Headspace are one of the more inclusive services that I have spoken to and been to. So I think places like that. Freedom Centre is another peer service that operates Wednesday and Friday evenings as well as Saturday mornings. So reaching out and trying to expose yourself to a more diverse queer population is really useful. Where else? Places like the AIDS Council or M Clinic, if you're a gay or bisexual man, just going in and doing your testing. The M Clinic boys talk about anything peer related. Like, some of the stuff that comes up is sort of crazy. So yeah, if you do want to go to a place like that to feel comfortable, do that. Yeah, they're probably the main services that I can think of. In saying that though, again, I just would like to think that you could go to your GP and talk about it. And if you have a bad experience, don't assume that all GPs are bad. My first GP was terrible, and it stopped me from going for quite a long time. But then my next GP was great. So sometimes, similar to relationships, sometimes you got to kiss a few toads to find the prince. So yeah, try not to let it distract you, even though I know that it hurts like hell when you do have a shit experience with services that are supposed to be there for you. Yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome. I think we've got to wrap up really quickly. Do you want to go through what M Clinic does and what WAC does? And
yeah, certainly. So M Clinic is a testing service for men that have sex with men. So if you do fall into that category, by all means, look up the service online. I can link you to some Facebooks and a website, so that's nice and easy. Give them a call, make reservations, and they can walk you through some of that stuff. At the AIDS Council, where I work, we do a lot of peer education. We do also run workshops for gay and bisexual men of all ages. So if that's something that you're interested in being a part of, we cover a absolute range of topics from identity to relationships to how to perform sexual behaviours better or in a more confident manner. So yeah, a bunch of different things. So that's sort of what the AIDS Council has to offer. In saying that as well, we do also have counselling services and stuff like that. So if you did want to talk about other things in terms of like negotiating your identity and wanting to talk around some of that stuff, then you've got the option to.
Awesome. And thank you so much. I think that kind of wraps us up. So we are going to announce the winner of our 2 Lunar Passes tomorrow. So stay tuned on the YPN Facebook page for that. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. Your questions have been absolutely fantastic. We will be doing another one of these videos in 3 weeks. It'll be a different topic. So stay tuned for that. And if you've still got questions, please keep submitting them in the meantime. And just, again, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much to the WA AIDS Council, M Clinic. Thank you so much to YACWA, the Youth Educating Peers, YEP Project, and to the Youth Pride Network. And thank you guys for watching. We hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks.